afternoon, and you're very welcome to this second session in this Innovation Week, Public Service Innovation Week. And I'm delighted that so many of you can join us. And the title and the theme of this particular session is Making Innovation Real. So, you know, we talk a lot about innovation and we have a lot of ideas about innovation, and we have a lot of, I'm sure, concepts. But people want to know, how do we do it? How do we make our organisations more innovative, and how do we plan for it? One of the things we have found in all the work that we do in innovation is that we need a plan and we need a strategy for innovation. It doesn't happen automatically. However well-intentioned we are, we do need a plan and a strategy for it. So that's the title of this afternoon session. And just to introduce myself, my name is Lucy Fallon-Byrne. I am the Assistant Secretary in the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, and I'm leading the reform programme and the reform agenda in Deeper. And we have put a lot of effort into helping our public service organisations right across the whole public service to help you with your innovative efforts. So we're delighted this afternoon. We're, I suppose, effectively for the first time launching what has been developed in the last year or so is an innovation strategy, or a framework for developing innovation across the public service, and for you to take this innovation strategy and work on it within your own organisations. And before I begin, I just want to introduce our panellists. We're delighted to be joined by Angela Denning. Angela is Chief Executive of the Court Service, and Angela has done a huge amount in terms of building the innovative capacity of the court service. And I think we can see that coming to fruition now when we see all of the virtual courts, Angela, online, and they're moving the courts around the country and so on. So we can see it as customers, and we can see exactly how that has played out. But Angela was one of the pilot organisations who helped us develop this strategy. So Angela has a lot of insights into the strategy itself and how it might work, but also she has a lot of experience of driving organisations in driving innovation in the court service. We're also joined by Eilís O'Connell. Eilís is Assistant Secretary in the Department of Agriculture and the Marine, and Eilís runs a very big organisation. She's Assistant Secretary there in charge of corporate affairs and all things to do with organisational development, HR, change, all of that. And Eilís has been another pilot organisation. We were very anxious, I suppose, to get a government department to work on this, because obviously, you know, we have a lot of organisations across the public service, and the civil service and the government departments are part of the central sector or the service. And Eilís has worked this through, and she's been one of the pilot organisations for the civil service. So we'll be looking forward to getting your insights there. And we also have Eddie O'Loughlin, who works in the Local Government Management Agency. And Eddie has been working with us on the development of the strategy, because there are a number of county local authorities who have actually worked very closely with us in developing the strategy, because it is for the wider public service, and we want to make sure that we make it applicable. So what we're going to do is I'm going to open with a brief presentation myself. I'm just giving you the overview of the strategy. It's very simple. We've made it as simple and as accessible as possible, because we want it to work and we want you to implement it. And then we're going to get the experiences from our three panelists in terms of how they have seen this work in their own organisation, and a practical way to make it real in the organisation. So getting started, and just to say at the outset, we got EU funding to help us to develop this this framework and this strategy, and that has been very, very helpful to us, because it allowed us to do some research, and it allowed us to work do a deep dive into organisations in terms of seeing what's really important and how might it work. So if we move on to the first slide, I'll explain then what the overall framework is. Okay, first of all, we have a very ambitious vision for making innovation real, and it is to harness the power of innovation to deliver world-class public services in Ireland. Now, I don't think that could be stronger or more powerful than that, because we want to harness all our own creative and innovative abilities and all the capability across all the public service to deliver world-class and excellent public services in Ireland. And as you know, our public service is a very, very big public service. We have over 335 staff across all the different sectors and across the public service. And you can see how we have harnessed the power of innovation very, very strongly in the last 7 months in responding to the big challenges that have been created by the COVID crisis. So that's our vision, to harness the power of innovation, deliver world-class public services. Now, a lot of you have told us, and we hear it again and again, that people are not quite sure what we mean by innovation. And I suppose the neatest definition that we have of it is it has to be something new in relation to innovation, the creation of new viable offering, that adds value. So each of those words is very, very important. For something to be innovative, it has to be new, whether it's a new service to the public, whether it's a new piece of technology, whether it's a new way of working, where it's a new organization or a new context or whatever. It has to be a new and innovative approach to it. Secondly, it has to be viable, it has to be strong. And thirdly, it has to add value. That's really, really important, because lots of us have ideas and we can try things and we can have lots of ideas about doing things in a different and new way, but it has to be implemented and it has to add value. And oftentimes the real innovation happens with the implementation. So we'll move on now to just the overview of the framework itself. So now, I said it's quite simple. There are 4 key priorities areas in our strategy. The first one, as you can see there, is that it is customer-centric, a citizen-centric innovation, because all of our efforts in innovation start with and end with the customer. We are serving the public, we are serving the customer, and our ideas must respond to customer needs, and they must be at the heart and the centre of what we do. So put citizens and customers and users at the centre of innovation to enhance their experience of public service. That's always where we start, and we have great ways in the document itself of showing you how we can do that. The second thing is then we have to look down our own organisations and look into our own organisations and say, how do we develop a culture of innovation? And to create a culture of innovation where all our staff are inspired, empowered, and enabled to innovate. And we've done a huge amount of work in the last number of years in trying to build a culture of innovation across the civil service, across the public service, and deep into the organisations that comprise the civil and the public service. Thirdly, then, we don't want to do this on our own. We need to collaborate. We need to scale up innovation by sharing our innovations across organisations. So we work across sectors and organisations to optimise efficiency by scaling innovation across the Irish public service. So that collaboration, that networking, that sharing technologies, sharing programmes, sharing approaches, and sharing all the learnings is really, really important. And that's what today and this week is about as much as anything else. And then the final one is this radical innovation, whether it's in the organisation or whether it's across the civil and the public service. It's to drive innovation across the Irish public service by pioneering change and long-term transformation. And we try to do that with all of the things that we do, whether it is working with the OGCIO in driving the digital agenda, whether it's working with robotic process automation, looking at new technologies such as AI. So we're just driving it from the centre as well to make sure that we can be the best we can and get innovation to work for us in responding to the challenges both of our environment and our customers. So that's the overall framework. Four pillars: citizen-centric innovation, culture of innovation, scaling up innovation, and building a transformative approach to innovation across the entire public service. And we'll go to the next slide just to explain a little bit more what each of those are. There's a little bit more detail on each of them. The first one is to listen and engage with your citizens and customers. So whatever way you have of engaging and listening to your customers, because each organisation and each sector in the public service has different, has different access to different customer groups. So it's important that you're constantly engaging with them. And whether it is through your frontline workers, whether it is through consultative forums, whether it is through research, or whether it is to customer panels, or whatever way you use, or participation networks, whatever, that has to be the start. And then we design and deliver integrated and often digitally integrated services and easy to use services. So one of the aims we have is that in about 10 years time, we'll have 90 to 95% of all our services will be available on online platforms. And secondly, then, looking at a culture of innovation, and that we have been doing, as I said, a lot of work about that. It's about leadership, but it's about having the right training in place for our staff. So there are skills around innovation. It's about doing surveys, about communicating with our staff, giving our staff the right information and so on, but also putting it into everything that we do, which is into our business plans, into our PMDS. Each of our staff should be expected to be innovative in their own area, and really having continuous engagement with our staff to ensure that their ideas are brought through. So we lead with vision and empower our staff and challenge the norm, and we equip our staff with the skills and the mindset and the tools to innovate. And we have a whole range of programs and training programs, as you know, to help you to do that and help staff develop those skills. Thirdly, then, in scaling up innovation, we have to collaborate across our public service ecosystem, if you like, to scale up innovation. And you can see a lot of that happening as it is. And we also have to collaborate across with the private sector. And you can see the COVID app is a great example of how we collaborated across the public service, and also we collaborated with those in the private sector to deliver that app successfully. And then we have capture and share insights, knowledge and lessons learned. So that's why we have these events, so that we can showcase the great work that's going on across the service. Finally, then, we have to develop strategic insights for future trends and requirements. And a lot of the work we're doing now in preparing for OPS 2030, we're working with the OECD on a foresight exercise to help us to be clear about what the mega trends are for the future, so that our public service is aligned with the challenges and the drivers that are happening around us and that are happening in the environment. So we, I suppose, have an obligation at the centre to lead the public service in understanding those mega trends and understanding how we can adapt and respond to them. And then support and promote a policy for innovation, like the way we have our innovation team at the moment, and the central supports we have, digital transformation and new ways of working through experimentation, testing and continuous improvement. So that's a little bit more detail on each of the four of those. But as I said, you don't have to engage with those at the moment, but it's to show you that the programme is built around these four pillars, and that there will be detail as you go through the strategy itself to help you along. Okay, we'll go to the next slide then. And this, just in terms of the overall overall framework, there is a particular set of guidance materials in the document that you can actually cut and paste, and really it's the framework for developing the innovation strategy in your own organisation. So we talk about the fixed, the flexible and the free framework. In other words, you can take, you can adapt the framework to suit your own organisation. And obviously the vision can be fixed if you wish, because we have, we're setting the ambition fairly high, and the priorities, you can work within those priorities. And then obviously the goals that you set for your own organisation, they're quite flexible. And then most importantly, whatever actions or whatever implementation roadmap you put in place, you're free to do exactly how you deliver those goals and that vision yourself. And equally then, on the right there, you can see the innovation strategy canvas. Now, I'm not going to go into any of those at the moment, but suffice to say that there is a template there, very, very simple, very easy to follow, that you can actually fill in exactly what you would like to do in your organisation, what best suits your organisation to deliver the innovation strategy. Because, it's really important, as I said, innovation just doesn't happen without work and without planning and without a strategy. And our goal is that we will all take on board this overall framework, and that we will slot it into our statements of strategy. We're all now in the space, we're developing our statements of strategy, because we do that when we get a new government, and we need to be launching and publishing an innovation a statement of strategy as for when the new government comes in, and we have 6 months to do it. So now we will have to all publish our statements of strategy before the end of the year. So this is a very kind of easy way of ensuring that you have innovation in your statement of strategy, because the template is there for you, and then the actions and the various ways of delivering that are all, and the guides to do that are there as well. So I'm going to finish with that. That's just a very, very quick overview of the actual strategy itself. And it is what it is. It's making innovation real, and it's there to help you. And it's there to help you in your organizations to bring this to life in the organization. So I'm now going to go to our panel, and I'm going to ask our three panelists to talk to us about their experience of working on this particular strategy. And I'm going to go firstly to Angela. Angela is CEO of the Court Service, and Angela worked with the team in developing this strategy, and she also has some experience of how it has worked in her own organisation. So over to you, Angela.
Thanks very much, Lucy. And thanks for asking me to speak today. I suppose if I go back to the start, in February of this year, we were asked to participate in the pilot to develop an innovation strategy for the public service. And given the time and the timing of it, I suppose we've had a great opportunity to test it out since. In the court service, we're a very public-facing organisation. We operate out of over 100 courthouses around the country, of 1,100 staff, and we have courts sitting every day. Even through lockdown, the courts continue to stay open. So we've had an opportunity both to test out the strategy and to test out the how it worked afterwards. So I suppose at the start of our innovation journey, we had participated in Innovation Week last year. We had our own innovation team in place in the Change Programme office here, and we had a call for ideas last year among the staff, which elicited 90 ideas. It was kind of a really high number of returns. And then COVID hit just as we were about to start to engage with the team from Deeper. So the meetings and workshops were all held virtually over the course of the spring and early summer, very interactive. The toolkit and the strategy canvas helped us to build our own strategy step by step. In July, then, that came to the management team. The first draft came to the management team, and we kind of agreed our priorities, and the final draft then was prepared and is ready to go to the staff now, so I'll be launching that in coming days. And I suppose the discovery phase is the first phase of developing your strategy. And when we looked at the current state in the courts around Easter time this year, we discovered we weren't quite as bad as we thought we'd been. We had plenty of examples of innovation. We'd centralised our jury services down in an office in Castlebar recently. E-licensing, so your pub licence and your pub extensions, all of those applications had gone online. We had brought first steps, the mediation service, into our family law offices, along with the Legal Aid Board. So we then looked at the emerging themes that were coming out, and I suppose we had adopted a modernisation programme this time last year, and key to that was putting the court user front and centre of everything we do. And that's aligned very, very well with, I suppose, what's come out of this strategy. It's all about better understanding the needs of service users and looking at how they want services delivered rather than how we want to deliver them to users. Digitisation is a huge part as well. Our technology estate, it would be acknowledged, isn't great, but we're working on improving it. It stood up well through COVID, so we've had a good chance to test things. We want to improve our processes, reduce paper, the reliance on paper. We've had COVID, one thing that's taught us is we've a huge over-reliance on paper, and that's something we need to change. We want to improve the speed at which we deliver services and the speed of change of services, because that's something that's very important. Sometimes change got killed by collaboration and consultation in the courts. So it's very important that we move things quite quickly. And I suppose COVID has taught us how to be agile. And also to collaborate across the justice sector. We are involved in a huge number of a lot of areas of our work involve other justice agencies. So when you think of the courts, you think of the guards, the prison service, but then you have agencies like TUSLA, the Legal Aid Board, and NGOs as well who participate, victim support and so on, who participate in court proceedings. And it's very important that we collaborate well as well. Now, luckily, all of this, when we started into looking at the discovery phase, as they call it, of the strategy development, it all very much aligned with what we had intended to do anyway as part of our modernisation programme. There have been challenges. Our IT estate was one challenge. It's not as easy for us to put things online, for example, as you would think. Some of our processes are very dated and complex and inefficient. There's a review of the civil administration of justice almost concluded at this stage that was going on separately, and we also have some family law legislation coming down the line. So I'm looking forward to both of those, because there's no point in digitising rubbish, and that's inefficient, costly. What you need to do is streamline your services, look at things from the user perspective, and then digitise. And I suppose a key challenge for us is about that user experience. How to reduce waiting times, delays, and to move processes on efficiently. And I suppose, one thing COVID has brought us are opportunities that we couldn't have expected. Never waste a good crisis, as some genius said many years ago, and we've taken full advantage of the crisis that COVID has presented to us. It's given us a freedom to innovate that, without that fear of failure, because if you failed, well, so what? You had tried, and you tried to improve things, and if it didn't work out, you could just try something different. And I think that's been a huge unburdening for our staff in recent months. We've had to adapt very quickly during COVID. As Lucy said, we had to get remote courts up and running very quickly. We already had video links to the prisons, but we had to greatly expand that. The nature of our work is a lot of staff can't work from home, but the staff who could, we needed to get them out of the office really quickly. So that was a huge upscaling of IT and remote working very, very quickly. And then some of the innovations that took place were things that didn't require any IT at all, that just required the will to do it. Staggering court lists, for example. For years, generations, people have complained that everybody is called, a bit like if you think of a hospital, everybody's called for an outpatient appointment at 10 o'clock in the morning. In the district court, everybody's called for 10:30. You could have 150 people there. We now have to stagger those lists and give people a time slot. That's improved the service to the customer. It might mean that our staff and judges have to hang around for a few minutes in between cases, but it's given a safer environment, and it's helped us to give what users wanted at the from the outset. And we've decided we'll build on the momentum as well. So we've got a kind of a hybrid system in place at the moment for remote courts. It's we repurposed technology we had to take evidence from abroad, expert witness evidence from abroad. It's robust, it's stable, it's secure, but it's not ideal. So now that our users have had a kind of a chance to live the change for a bit, I suppose what we want to do now is build on the momentum. So we're in the process of setting up an e-courts group who are going to look at what exactly users want. Now we have a group of judges, solicitors, barristers, and other court users, staff as well, who've had a chance to try out different platforms and see what works and what doesn't work. So before we go out to the market for procurement, we'll do a piece of work around that. We've moved other things online. So in recent weeks, together with the Revenue Commissioners, the CA24 for probate, which is the tax form, has now gone online, which should really simplify probate for court users. We've worked very closely with our justice partners to collaborate, a huge collaboration with the Prison Service and Garda Síochána, but also with the department. They were able to get legislation for us very quickly that we needed in order to deliver some of the changes. So now we have our 3-year innovation strategy, and I suppose Lucy spoke earlier about that free and flexible framework, and it's very important for you to know that it is the shape is there, but you can pick the bits that suit your organisation best. So we've decided to focus on user-centric innovation. That's there in the framework. The building a culture of innovation, using tools and training in order to do that, and then scaling up innovation as well. They're the 3 that are most applicable to the courts over the coming years. We're at a stage now, we have to, under statute, we have to prepare a strategic plan for the next 3 years. That's due at the end of November. So this has all been very timely for us, and it's fitted in very well with our plans to modernise. There go the lights, sorry. The next step, so we're in the process of developing an innovation roadmap for our staff. And what's very, very important, we have an innovation team in place, but we need to build and support that team. We want to provide training to leaders right across the organisation. And what's really important to me is to make it real for our staff. Back to what Lucy spoke about at the beginning. Our users, we've listened to our users, we've taken their feedback on board, and we want to kind of integrate and have better, easy to use services. But the reality is that our staff are the people who will deliver that. Many years ago, I was at a training thing in England, and the head of Marks and Spencer's HR came in, and he said how at one stage they nearly went to the wall because they didn't listen to their customer service staff, the people who work on their tills, who were telling them, the staff or the customers say those trousers would be lovely, but you have them in navy instead of in black and white check or whatever it was. And they weren't listening to their staff. And similar to that, it's very important when we have a public facing organisation, we have to listen to the staff on our public counters, because that's where the best ideas come from. And I suppose our call for ideas last year has really taught us that some of the ideas that came from that, which we're now in the process of rolling out, are very simple, very easy to use, but brilliant in terms of customer service, but also in terms of efficiency. New staff who say, well, why do you do that way? Why am I moving paper from A to B to C and back to A again? And it's very, very important that I equip our leaders with the tools to listen, and also to get the good ideas unadulterated up the line. Because what I find, certainly sitting in my position, is that what might have been a great idea when it started with the clerical officer on a public counter in Cavan, by the time it gets to me, it's been diluted significantly. So it's how to keep that really, really good idea and keep the kernel of it. And I suppose back to what Lucy spoke about as well there, the sharing of insights and knowledge through collaboration and connection with other organisations. That's really, really important. And I think it's really important for organisations to share their failures as well as their successes. I'm a great believer in learning from your failure. Everybody makes mistakes. We're human. And particularly if you look at what's happened through COVID, every organisation has had to try things. And if they worked, great, run with them. And if they don't work, bin it and try something different. And it's about sharing, I suppose, the failures as well as the successes. Everybody's great at kind of trumpeting their successes, and we're less good at sharing our failures. But it's from the failures you actually learn the most. And it's about, I suppose, having a culture in an organisation where staff feel free to share those failures, and that they won't, I suppose, be shot for failing. Part of the risk attached to innovation is that acceptance that not everything's going to work and not everything is going to succeed. And it's just about learning quickly and being agile enough to recognise that something's not working, dump it and move on to the next thing. So I suppose if I was asked, back 6 months ago, what advice would I give, having been down through the road of developing the strategy? One thing I would absolutely say is to use the development guidance documents that Deeper have developed. They're clear, they're easy to translate, they're very, very accessible. And it provides step-by-step guidance on how to interpret the public service innovation strategy and to develop your own organisational commitments that align to it. The fixed, flexible and free, it's absolutely true. There's a menu of options there that you can pick. Pick the ones that best suit your organisation for the time that it's in now, rather than kind of thinking too far ahead. Pick what will make it real for your staff now. Establish a working team. You need to have a senior sponsor to drive innovation in your organisation. We've set up a strategy and reform division here, and innovation sits within that. But it's very, very, very important that innovation kind of sits at a high level in your organisation so that it's driven. What isn't counted doesn't get done in organisations. We all know that. And what isn't driven doesn't get done as well. Assign a project manager to drive the process of the strategy development. It's very, very key that you have an owner for it. I have found through bitter experience here that if it doesn't have a name beside it on a plan, it's nobody's responsibility and it gets pushed to the bottom of the list. So if you want to get things done, put a name beside the development of the strategy, and that will absolutely make sure it gets done. Align your goals. We were lucky that we had done a lot of work following on from, we were the subject of a capability review that Deeper carried out a couple of years ago, and following on from that we developed our own modernisation programme, which is all about making things easier quicker and cheaper for the court user. You have to design for inclusion. You have to empower your staff and give them that kind of skill set that, I think innovation is all about a frame of mind. At the back of it, that you have to have people who are open-minded enough to be willing to try things. And certainly during the COVID period, I've seen that my staff, absolutely, they'll try anything in order to deliver a better service for the customer. And it was, we were faced with the option of changing how we did things or not being able to provide a service at all. And it's been fantastic to see how staff have embraced that. And what's been a really, really difficult period for them, because the level of administration now around courts has increased dramatically, because we don't have those online systems that we'd love to have someday in the future. But it's important to align your goals. So align your goals and your overall strategy with your goals and your innovation strategy, and that makes it much, much easier. And lastly, communicate your strategy. So it's very, very important that you communicate it both inside your organisation to your staff and your leadership, but also outside to your key stakeholders, so that they know that this journey is happening. And I suppose when I spoke earlier about that, building on the momentum we had achieved through COVID, and I think I can say this, not all of our stakeholders were jumping at the opportunity to join remote courts, for example. But it was very clear to me, to my team here and to the judiciary, that if we couldn't deliver some kind of remote access to courts, we were going to finish up with backlogs that were years long, and that was to nobody's benefit. So we kind of had to embrace it, whether we liked it or not. And it's proven to be a success. And our stakeholders now, I see even the slower people to come to the party or to get on the bus have now joined it, because they realise that, and particularly, today of all days, we don't know what's going to happen later on. We don't know what announcements will be made later on, but we have a roadmap in place, which means that even if we have level 5 restrictions in Ireland, we'll be able to keep far more courts going than we could last March. And I suppose that's down to that innovative mindset that our staff adopted. So this week in Innovation Week in the courts, we have a kind of a full schedule of programs, of a full program of events, even though delivering court at this time is far, far more difficult. One thing we are going to do is we're going to celebrate the successes over the last 6 months. We haven't had a chance to do that, and I think it's really, really important that where things work, that the staff are acknowledged and that the effort it's taken is acknowledged. There's a training webinar which takes place tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and it's available to all public service bodies. So Vinny and Deepa will circulate the details of that. This has been a great opportunity for staff to get involved and to make the connection, I suppose, between innovation and their work, their day-to-day work. Innovation was always something that was kind of out there, up in the clouds, that people who had loads of time on their hands thought about, whereas the reality is that innovation's become very, very real for every member of staff in every court office over the last 6 months. So we've circulated the deeper programme of events this year, and it's great that all the events are virtual, and that there's a mix of lunchtime events and early morning, late afternoon, and so on, that people can participate. And we're also taking part in the Justice Sector Hackathon, which is our first time to have a go at one of these. So we're really, really looking forward to it. And I suppose Robert spoke earlier about how important it is to share stories. My story from I suppose our journey over the last 6 months, between a combination of working on the public sector strategy and COVID, is to just embrace it, go with it, use that development guidance document, and just get out there and make it real for your staff. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Angela. I think that was it's a very powerful story that you have there, and I think we all know, Angela, that with all the best will in the world, it has been a fairly traditional sector that you're in there, and you have this massive innovation going on in the space of a very, very short time. I think I heard Chief Justice saying that you've implemented more innovations and more change in the last 5 months than you have in the last 100 years. So it's
I'd
a great story.
100 years. Yeah, we've moved from the 1700s to modern day very, very quickly. And not everybody's been happy, and we won't keep all of it at the end. We'll throw some bits in the bin, but we're learning as we go, and I think that's what's been important.
Absolutely, Angela. And I think just to say now at this point, and I should have said it earlier, We have a chat function there on the screen, and if you have questions, please feed them in, or observations, please feed them in, because Vinny is behind the scenes here and he's going to collate those questions, and he'll ask our panel to respond to some of your questions at the end of the session. So maybe we'll just to remind, I suppose, I think what struck me, Angela, just I suppose to really hammer home the point, it is the user experience that drives everything for you. But I'm really taken with, having your staff on the front line. They are your research. They are the people who know what's going on right in front of them. I often say that. I think the person on the till in a retail shop or in a supermarket, the person at the reception in a hotel, the people who are at the counters in social welfare, they're actually experiencing on a daily basis what our customers want. And we completely underutilize them. We should value them and value the insights that they have, and find the ways really to change the service accordingly, because they see it right there before they're a powerful kind of starting point for our innovation. And I like the idea of sharing your failures, having a dedicated person to drive the innovation as well. So we'll come back to you, Angela, for further insights later on. But now we're going to go over to Eilís. And Eilís works in the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, quite a big organisation, Eilís. And you have been involved in developing this pilot as well, but you've also been involved in driving the innovative efforts in a big government department. So we would be delighted to hear your experiences, Eilís.
Okay, thanks very much, Lucy. And I suppose I have to say first, on behalf of all of my colleagues in the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, that we were really pleased to be part of this pilot project to develop an innovation strategy for the Irish Public Service. It was a very useful experience for us to be part of that process. Of course, I'd like to take the opportunity as well to thank our colleagues in EY, who made the process very easy and very streamlined, as Angela has said. And because the pilots began, as she said as well, before the lockdown in March, we all had to be very agile and responsive, even to keep the project of developing an innovation strategy going. So the fact that we were all going through this process as well with other public service bodies meant that we had opportunities to learn from each other as well. And I'm very grateful to the other pilot organisations because they inspired us with some of the things that we were doing. And I hope everybody gets some benefit out of hearing about some of those today. I think it really demonstrates as well the power of being involved in something like this. In the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, a great deal of innovation is required of us all of the time. We're an organisation that needs to adapt to change in our sector on a regular basis. We have to constantly react to the demands and developments that are out there. And we feel our new innovation strategy really reflects that need to continuously improve, to deliver best-in-class services, and to tackle the major challenges and opportunities facing both the department and Ireland in the course of the period that's covered by our next statement of strategy, and that's going to run from 2021 through to 2024. So some of the major challenges that are facing us in DAFM: Brexit, of course, that's a major challenge for everyone in our sector. Climate change, including climate adaptation and mitigation. There's the need to protect biodiversity and ecosystems. There's CAP reform as well, which will involve the development of a new common agricultural policy and common fisheries policy. And then, in common with all public service organisations as well, there's the need for increasing digitalisation. In a world where increasingly people expect solutions on their phone, accessible 24 hours a day. So, as Lucy mentioned earlier, innovation is defined as the creation of a new viable offering that adds value. And as an organisation, adding value to the sectors that we serve is really at the core of our culture. And we want to support a socially, environmentally and economically sustainable Ireland. And we want to do that through innovative service design, through collaboration and continuous improvement. So in terms of the process that DAFM engaged in when we were developing our innovation strategy, at the outset of the discovery phase, We engaged with colleagues in EY who were there to support us, and with colleagues in the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform. We identified some potential DAFM projects that we could use as case studies and that we could examine more closely as part of innovation hubs. We looked at doing an innovation snapshot, which was really an organisation review to look at the organisation's maturity in terms of innovation. We identified our strengths and weaknesses and what enablers and barriers to innovation existed for us. We carried out an innovation capture survey as well, and we asked people right out across the organisation, how are you innovating right now? In response to COVID-19. It was a very topical survey at the time, and it gave us great insights into what people were doing all around the organisation to deal with the unprecedented situation that we have all found ourselves in. We selected 2 projects as our innovative case study projects. One was the Green Teams project, and the other was a CRM project, a customer engagement contact centre. And these were quite different projects in our organisation, because one was very reliant on technology, that was the CRM project, and the other was very reliant on people's behaviour. So 2 workshops were held with representatives of those 2 case studies. And that process in itself was useful. It helped our people across the organisation to see that the work that they were doing was innovative, that it was positive, and it had wider applications beyond their own section, beyond the area of the department that they worked in, and potentially beyond the borders of the organisation as well. We worked through the priorities that Lucy mentioned earlier. So we looked at the citizen-centric innovations, the culture of innovation, and how we can scale up innovation and transformative innovation that's driven from the centre. Following this, we had a number of workshops and we engaged as well with wider groups across the organisation to really establish what our ambitions were for DAFM in developing our innovation strategy. We used the innovation canvas that Lucy showed you earlier, and we completed it with the input and engagement of staff across the organisation. The innovation canvas was really easy to use because it contained goals and initiatives under each of the 4 priorities. And we assessed those, we identified which actions were the most relevant to us and which ones required customization or could be included as new or existing initiatives. And as part of that process, we consulted with wider stakeholders across the organisation. The other thing that we did, because we've had a reform team for some time in the organisation, and we have for the last few years had an innovation group as well. So we wanted to very much formalise what that innovation team was going to do. So we took the opportunity to develop a terms of reference for our innovation team, and we'd be happy to make that available to all other civil and public service organisations if they wanted to use it and customise it for their own organisations. So for us, really, the strategy helped us to enhance and embed a culture of innovation in DAFM. It's to help us the implementation of it will help us empower our staff, our leadership, and we hope it will inspire our multidisciplinary and cross-departmental teams to bring forward new ideas. We want to continuously improve our capabilities. We want to collaborate with our partners to create value and to transform our services and delivery models to meet the emerging needs of our stakeholders, and that we feel that will truly make innovation real in our organisation and for all our stakeholders. Lucy referenced earlier the flexible elements of the strategy, and Angela said, yeah, we'll all be doing different things in different organisations. So if I can give a few examples of that. In terms of listening and engagement with the citizen, I should say that that's something that as an organisation, it's a real strength for us. We're very good at it and we want to build on that strength even further. So normally in the month of September, just gone, we would have had a great deal of face-to-face engagement with thousands of our clients at the Ploughing Championships. And we didn't have an opportunity to do that this year. So we now have to think of new ways that we can engage with that client base. We consult widely certainly all the time in relation to policy matters through stakeholder consultation. But what we want to do now is to ensure that we hardwire all of that into our organisation. In terms of designing for inclusion, we're going to use personas to ensure that our systems are inclusive, and we'll review the accessibility of our services. We want to deliver seamlessly integrated and easy to use services, and we'll use customer journey mapping to do that. We want to support the leaders in the organisation to lead with vision and to challenge the norm, and that will help us to drive and manage innovation on a continuous basis, with the innovation team now ready to support our heads of division across the organisation. We want to empower our staff and adopt agile methodologies to encourage piloting, trialing of new ideas. And really something that Pete Lunn referenced in an earlier session, we want to give confidence to people to innovate so that they can go ahead and make those changes that they need to do to deliver better services to our clients. So we need to equip our staff as well with the resources, the tools and the pathways to innovate. We want to develop an innovation network, and of course our innovation team internally is multidisciplinary. So that's very important that people will be learning from each other across the organization's divisions. We want to promote and enable internal cross-departmental collaboration. We want to share insights and adopt collaboration tools across the organisation. We want to identify successful innovations either within or outside the organisation that we can use and scale up internally. There's a number of opportunities that this will give us to empower our staff to effectively respond to the challenges that are facing us. We want to become a global leader in sustainability, and we want to develop and utilise advanced and secure technologies to provide agile solutions for our clients. So there are real benefits to our staff as well, we believe, in being involved in projects like this. Things like networking across the organisation, having great experience of team working, and a wider understanding of how the sector works. Thinking about the types of advice that I would give to other public service bodies beginning on this journey, I suppose my main recommendation to others is not to be put off by thinking that innovation is something complex, that it costs a lot, or that it's dependent on a great deal of technology. I suppose the amazing thing that we've found since we started holding our own internal recognition events a number of years ago for the people whose projects we were putting forward for Civil Service Excellence Awards is the number and variety of innovations that are actually happening every day throughout the organisation. And without these recognition events, we mightn't even have been aware of the full extent of the innovations going on in the organisation. The other thing I suppose to remember is that innovation happens where people work together to resolve issues. And people might be aware that diversity and inclusion is also a very important issue for us and a priority for us in DAFM. And it's very much linked to innovation. We think that people with different skill sets, experience, perspectives, all working together collaboratively in multidisciplinary teams are the key to success. And the ability to see all angles requires diversity of thought, of culture, of gender, on all aspects. So really, no one is as smart as all of us working together on this type of stuff. In terms of the future then, for driving innovation and DAFM, to make it real and to implement the goals and actions in our strategy, we want to leverage and align to a lot of existing activities and initiatives within the organisation. So it will need to be a very strong part of our statement of strategy, as others have mentioned as well. It has to align strongly with our IT strategy, with the Our Public Service and Civil Service Renewal, as well as our new Foodwise 2030 strategy and CAP strategic plan and all the other policy areas that we work in. We've identified that to progress innovation and collaboration within teams, staff may need access to enhanced tools and technology infrastructure and learning and development opportunities. And to effect the changes and to implement key goals, priorities and actions, we'll adopt a programme management approach. And we'll leverage key tools to ensure our actions are effectively monitored and delivered on time. DAFM's innovation team will monitor the strategy and its implementation, ensuring that we're working to the plan and identifying and sharing our successes, as well as overcoming any challenges to achieving our ambitions. So I can't let this opportunity pass without mentioning some of the fantastic DAFM projects that we celebrated only last Friday as we had our internal recognition event. And of course, that was an online affair for the very first time this year. So I was grateful very much so to my own staff on the reform and innovation side for arranging that and doing it in such a new way. So some of the projects that we recognised last week was a farm veterinary proximity and demography analysis that won a project that won an Analytics Institute Data Analytics Award and won that in the public sector analytics category. The safe trading of cattle during COVID-19, our food safety and food authenticity programme, the Contact Engagement Centre, or the CRM project that I mentioned earlier. And really that project is giving us a single view of the farmer and all our engagements with individual farmers who call us or get in contact with us through our new CRM system. We developed a COVID-19 pandemic payments tracker dashboard. We have put in place a COVID-19 response team that has been working across all our organisations to put safety processes in place. We also were supporting the HSE in doing some testing in our DAFM labs, our PCR testing for COVID-19. And we designed and delivered online workshops and satellite navigation data and temperature data evaluation to ensure compliance with animal welfare rules. We've integrated quality systems in our labs. We've mitigated GDPR risks through use of innovation and technology. We've continued our TB eradication program during COVID-19, developed a remote working solution. Induction programs have gone online. And we also gave a special award to one of our cybersecurity staff who took the initiative to send a humorous and engaging weekly email to remind us all of the particular risks that can arise when working remotely. And that initiative has seen a dramatic increase in the reporting of cyber risks in our organisation. It's also reduced the number of adverse cyber events. And it's an example how really effective communication can support awareness and produce positive results. And it's a great example of the type of messaging that Pete Lone mentioned earlier today in terms of getting a really strong message across that can impact on people's behaviour. So just in conclusion to say that I'm really proud of the work that DAFM does as an organisation in the innovation space. And I'm always grateful for the opportunity to showcase the work of the teams within the organisation that really tackle and grapple real life issues and innovate every day to make things better for their colleagues and for the public that we serve. Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you very much, Eilís. That was really, really wonderful. And it's wonderful to just, I suppose, get an insight into a large and complex organisation and a sector like that and to show what you actually can do. And I really like the idea of you doing the innovation snapshot and also the survey is how are you innovating now? Because it does really make it real when somebody is asked that question. Or, you know, are you expected to innovate? I know we had a session with our Secretary General last year and he wanted each of us to tell him, you know, what in our business planning, what innovative things we were going to do the following year. And even though it was the simplest thing ever, I can tell you it really put us all into the innovation space very fast. So that's actually wonderful, and there are great examples there, Eilís. And we also know that you've had a lot of changes of ministers in your organisation. So you've been very agile and adaptive to all of that, as well as fighting COVID. And of course, it's a sector and a department that has enormous challenges. I mean, if you even think of all of the work that has to be done in that sector in relation to climate action, climate change, Brexit, all of the different changing technologies around food and agriculture, it's a huge challenge. But I think you're well up for it. And I like the fact that you mentioned the use of the innovation canvas, and we might get some questions from our participants on that later on. Eilís, thank you very, very much, and congratulations to the department for all that you do have done. So we're going to go on now to Eddie. Eddie O'Loughlin is in the Local Government Management Agency, and we've asked you to speak to us, Eddie, because you have sight and perspective on the local authority sector in Ireland. And of course, the local authority sector has been very active during COVID, and they have done wonderful things with our cities and our streets and our towns. And they have been great in terms of the community call as well, looking after our most vulnerable and isolated citizens. And they've done all of these great things. And I know they've used technologies and apps and everything to try and connect with their customers. And you did publish a compilation, a kind of a publication of all the stories of innovation in the local authority sector. So we'll be delighted to hear how you're making innovation real in the local authority sector and what the successes are in that area. Thank you, Eddie, for joining us.
Thanks very much, Lucy, and thanks very much to Eilís and Angela for sharing your insights there and what's happening in your own organisations. It's very, very interesting to see what's happened in other public service organisations. Next slide, please. So I suppose where we found ourselves is we were invited to get involved in the pilot. The local government management agency is an agency of the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage, as it's now called. It was established in 2012, and basically what we do is we provide a range of professional services to the local authorities. So we're intrinsically linked to the CCMA, to the 31 local authorities on delivery of best practice services, policies, and I suppose linked into that intrinsically would be innovation and continuous improvement. Next slide, please. When the vision and mission was established for the organisation, there was a big, I suppose, it was precluded by a strategic and operational review of the LGMA, and this was really where the LGMA, through innovation, went out to their customers and their stakeholders to ask, look at how can we best serve the local government and local authorities. There was huge interaction with all stakeholders, the department and the local authorities, the chief executives, the CCMA, and a number of key asks, I suppose, came back from the stakeholders. One was about improving our strategic input into the board and the CCMA committees, improving on sectoral communications, more research-based guidance. Innovation came back very loud to be, we needed to push that up the agenda when it came to the LGMA. It wasn't that the organisation wasn't innovation. In actual fact, it is very innovative, as are the local authorities, but it was really about bringing some more structure, I suppose, and some more support for a more cohesive action plan and a more cohesive plan for innovation in the LGMA and obviously to the wider local authorities. And it's interesting, Lucy, when you mentioned there about the efforts by the local authorities during the COVID and the ongoing COVID challenges that we face. Early enough in the pandemic, we carried out a survey. We engaged with the local authorities, and we identified over 200 different innovations that are successfully implemented to ensure that services were provided to the public, to ensure that library services, well-being, and other services were continued to make sure that as best as possible that the public were served by the local authorities. And it was fantastic to see some of those innovations. And I think, Angela, you mentioned it, you never waste a crisis. When everybody's back was put to the wall, it's amazing what can happen where generally or traditionally there might be barriers and reluctance to change. When the pressure was on and something happened, things happened, and there was fantastic progress made in that front. Next slide, please. So the strategic and operational review that was carried out by the LGMA was really about trying to go to our customers, which are the local authorities, to try and look and see how could we serve the sector better. And really the outputs from that really were a new structure within the organisation based on 4 pillars. The first pillar was all about the local government, the strategy, the research, communications. It included water at the time. Pillar 2 was local government organisational support, so supporting the local authorities in day-to-day operations. We had our own internal operations pillar, which is about the internal workings of the organisation. And lastly, but obviously most importantly, in my point of view, the local government programme management and innovation. So here was the response, if you like, of the ask of our stakeholders to put innovation on the priority list. It was formed as part of Pillar 4 under Nolan McHugh. And that restructuring has taken place. The pillars are in place. And really, we entered into this year with sort of, we were talking about the next step. Where were we going to go with it? And as I say, next slide, please. Timing is everything. The call came from Deeper, wondering would we get involved in the national strategy development program, and obviously we were delighted to do that. We partnered with Monaghan as a local authority to help us on that journey. We represent the local authorities, but obviously having Monaghan, who are the public facing element, would be very, very important to make sure that we cover all the essential bases on that. We were delighted to embark on the programme. It was, I have to say, it was expertly facilitated by EY. Killian, Jenny, and Siobhan brought us through numerous steps, and it was very, very well handled and managed. We had kicked off initially with just general discussion and meet and greet meetings with Monaghan and ourselves with Ernst & Young, and then we were forced then into the lockdown that pursued. I suppose we lost probably 4 or 5 weeks in the program, it's fair to say, at that stage. But very quickly, when we realised that this was going to be somewhat prolonged, Monaghan and ourselves and EY said we'd push ahead. And I must say there was huge determination there from the 3 teams to make sure that we made the best of this opportunity to push ahead and have our input, if you like, and gain something from the whole programme. So what we decided to do at that stage was we identified 2 projects. One was going to be in Monaghan, and it was going to be a little bit left of field, not necessarily just around the canvas. And we'll talk about that in a second. And what we said we would do then later on in the programme, when we had some feedback on the strategy in Canvas, that we would actually use the strategy Canvas and the framework to actually develop our own strategy. So we said we'd really test the tools for what they were designed to do. Next slide, please. So first of all, it was Monaghan. Monaghan came up with this fantastic idea to, as part of an urban regeneration of Monaghan town, the county town in Monaghan, they were looking at developing, if you like, a strategy to make Monaghan town of the future. Next slide, please. So this was a fantastic opportunity to look at, applying the tools, the innovation tools, and a slightly different angle. And to demonstrate, I suppose, to ourselves and to the team in Monaghan, what can be done and what innovation can do, what it can be used to do. So there was a selection of tools selected that were particularly suitable for what we were trying to do here, was to influence the future design of what a new Monaghan town would look like. The approach that was taken was, there was a big review of any work that had been done to date. There had been some studies done, some general planning done, some drafting of potential layouts, and all of that information was assembled, assimilated, and then challenged through a design thinking approach, where we sort of diverged, challenged all the assumptions, come back in again then to look at new options, to look at maybe adding more ideas to the pot. It was all carried out in a very structured approach. We had a project plan, 4-week program, and delivered on time. The workshops were all completed online using Mural, which is a new tool, and I have to say it was very, very successful. And I suppose that in itself was innovative, in that initially the plans would have been that the workshop would have been held in Monaghan with the teams meeting face to face and kind of have that bond there. But that had to be developed online and took a certain amount of skill, I suppose, and personality by everybody to accept that and get on. We also ran this particular challenge through the fixed, flexible and free framework and the canvas, just to fact check it and to, I suppose, to stress test the tools that EY were developing. And I think they found that particularly helpful. Well, it wasn't to develop a strategy, it was to use tools in an innovation exercise. And I think that led to, certainly led to benefits and recommendations before they finished up with the final tools, if you like. Next slide, please. Another tool that was used, and I thought it was particularly apt here, was looking at customer personas. As part of the diverging piece, what we done was we wore the shoes of different types of people, and it was a very, very interesting way of opening up the mind and looking at things from different perspectives. So we had Larry. He was a retired school teacher. He wanted to stay and live in Monaghan. Now, he obviously, we had to look at it from his point of view and what would his asks be, what would his requirements be. Jane and Brian were a young couple relocating from Dublin, wanted to start a family, so they would have had a totally different what a vibrant town and what a town would do to entice them to move into it. Property prices, schools, so on and so on. Deirdre and Michael, they were a couple that were just looking for somewhere to go for a weekend, so they had disposable income. Would go on a couple of weekends away every year. So what would draw them to a town like Monaghan? And then finally, David was an investor, wanted to set up his first office in Europe, but also wanted to be close to the UK. Why would he select Monaghan town as his preference? And again, we looked at it from that point of view. And really what that done was that it gave us a totally different perspective on what an urban regeneration should look like. Next slide, please. And the output, well, the outputs were very interesting, and they're still, I suppose, they still have to be hard enough. There's still work going on this, but basically, the vision for the town was to become joints of innovation, to create an open, smart and sustainable town where all people are drawn to live and visit and invest. And it covers an awful lot. Again, kind of applying the tools and the pillar structure, there was 5 key pillars identified. First one was to provide the highest standards of living and well-being. There'll be goals like, sporting population group, long-term vibrancy, the planning, housing that is quality but affordable, empowering the council staff to deliver with excellence would come under that as well. So, so just bringing everything to a new level of customer service, I suppose, if you like. Pillar 2 was setting the national standard for sustainability. So we talked about creating a carbon neutral town potentially. Huge ambition, but is that something that could be developed? Looking at district heating, solar power, battery storage, and so on. And embedding sustainability in the heart of the council as well, because the programme also included the building of new offices in Monaghan town. So again, the council will be seen as the leaders in sustainability and leading the way as part of this whole regeneration, if you like, of Monaghan town. Pillar 3 was creating economic and commercial opportunity. Again, developing tourism, a brand, making sure that there's an experience to be had in the town through activities, through places to go, through history, through museum. Upgrading the transport infrastructure would be very important there. It's not on a rail link, so bus service, road service would be very, very important when it comes to that for Monaghan. And finally, Pillar 5, just regenerating Monaghan town to create experiences. So, as a visitor, as a resident, as an investor, that when you go to Monaghan town, you would experience something and experience something positive. So, it's about delivering amenities, regenerating the town centre, and just, making it a buzzy, cool place to go, live or invest. Next slide, please. So that was really, I suppose, the challenge that we used in Monaghan, and what it done was it gave us a great understanding, I suppose, of the power of innovation. It certainly invigorated the team in Monaghan, and I have to say that the team was excellent there, and very open and very, very, very passionate about the whole project. The second half, if you like, and this is where we got involved in the challenge. We set the challenge to develop our own innovation strategy by developing our own strategy and priorities through the use of the tools that were developed by EY. So really we were doing a stress test for them, but we used a team within the LGMA that hadn't been involved in the innovation effort to date as such. So, it mimicked, if you like, bringing it into a new organisation and to test the tools from start. The inputs, I suppose, at the start of this that would have been looked at would have been the corporate plan. Obviously, would be key. So that was reviewed. The people strategy for local authorities 2018 strategy there, key to it. Of course, the strategic and operational review and implementation plan would have had a big bearing on what our own strategy, how it would take shape. We carried out our own maturity assessment. And I think Eilís mentioned earlier that they'd done their own surveys inside. We developed our own maturity assessment with the EY, and it was very, very specific, if you like, and tailored to local authorities. So it spoke our language. The questions were tailored, if you like, to be very specific for local authorities and the LGMA to get the best value, I suppose, and the best benchmark that we could possibly get out of it. So what we had after that really was, our ambition, our overall strategy for where the organisation was going. We had a baseline for the a benchmark, if you like, for where innovation currently was. And from that then, we used the tools, the public service pyramid, the fixed, free and flexible framework, this innovation strategy canvas, and then the innovation strategy document to develop. What we wanted to do was to develop the LGMA innovation ambition, identify specific opportunities and challenges, an implementation plan ultimately, and a whole governance structure around how we were going to approach innovation and roll it out both within the LGMA and support the local authorities in doing the same, which is really the bigger picture in this. When you look at, there's already 33,000 people working in the local government sector. We're only a small part of that, but that's really where the big win is in this for us. Next slide. So again, as I say, we used the strategy canvas. We plugged in, if you like, where the national information was at the time, that harnessing the power of innovation to deliver world-class public services. We inputted the priorities, fleshed them out, and basically come up with our own innovation ambition and priorities. And we're working now on goals and implementation plans to get us to the next stage. Next slide, please. Next slide. So where do we get to? Well, I mean, we've after a lot of trashing and debate and good discussions, we see ourselves to be an innovation partner and influencer, promoting and supporting innovation across the local government sector. So I suppose we see ourselves we want to develop ourselves into an exemplar of innovation, to be seen as experts in innovation, and that will enable us to support and promote local government when they embark on their journey. We also want to make sure that, I suppose, we become a trusted partner of the local authorities, and that we have mechanisms and supports in place that will help them embark on the journey. The main opportunities that came from that would be we see embedding innovation as a big opportunity. Make sure there's a common understanding of what innovation is, and instill innovation as part of the day job. Communications was very important, both internally and externally. We'll be promoting the LGMA as the conduit of bringing small ideas to large results. Promote obviously the wins, but also as we discussed earlier there, it's important that we share failures as well, or where something didn't work. There's no point a number of different organisations making the same mistakes. Let's share the good and the bad, and let's learn from that and move on. And also upskilling. We see huge opportunity there to spread the word on innovation and to upskill people in the organisation, in the wider local authorities. So what are we going to deliver? What we see ourselves delivering, and we're well on our way to doing this, is establishing an internal innovation pathway and governance process. So we want to have a process defined where we bring our innovation opportunities and projects through. That's going to be very important, and it's very important that people understand that and can see that, so they can see how their idea is routed through a process. We want to develop our own innovation team structures, comms, ideation, implementation. So we have a structured approach dealing with innovation. And that'll all be wrapped together with a detailed implementation plan. So actions, owners, dates, etc. And lastly, and probably most importantly, we want to just develop further this playbook for local authorities. So the great work that's happened already with the standards, the framework, and the strategy document and the guidelines that are there, we want to look and see, is there anything else local authorities need to help them on their journey? We're going to workshop that this week as part of Innovation Week. We're having it on Thursday. So we want to really, engage with the local authorities to see, what are your barriers? Is there common themes there that we can add additional support to help you on the journey to get to where we all want to be, which is heading in the same direction, in the national direction. With regard to advice, I suppose, for anyone starting out in this, high-level support, top-level support is very, very important, that this is seen as a priority for an organisation. Innovation is tricky to get running, I suppose, and it's very, very important that top-level support is there to make sure that it's on the agenda and it's part of where your organisation wants to go. Energy is important, investing the time and giving people time to assess innovation and what it's about. So again, that's very, very important. And look, approach it with gusto, and don't be afraid to ask other organisations about lessons learned, about pitfalls, and how best to proceed on the journey. So, look, thanks very much for giving me the opportunity, again, for inviting us here and giving me the opportunity to talk about innovation on behalf of the local authorities and on behalf of the LGMA. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Eddie. Thank you very much. I think that was very helpful, and I think we'll all be looking forward to visiting Monaghan very soon to see before our very eyes the great things that are happening up there. And I liked your idea of putting a structure of innovation. We might have a lot of innovation things going on, but having it planned and structured is quite important as well. And I loved the personas. That's one way of acting out, I suppose, really the perspective of our customers. So thank you, Eddie. And I know you're doing great work in the LGMA. I have a kind of a soft spot for Monaghan myself. My daughter got married in Castle Leslie last year, so I'm very fond of Monaghan for that reason. We had a great time up there. I just wanted now to open it up to yourselves for questions, and I think Vinny is going to pull together the questions from the from the audience and maybe ask 2 or 3 together. And I might just add to the mix, Vinny. I'll get you in there. But Angela, you might think of this one. Somebody has sent me a text. They said they're on it and they're very enjoying it, but they wanted to know how important was it to get your senior leadership, your Chief Justice and your Justice, all the justices and the judges on board with this? Was that a critical success factor in everything that you do? But you might be considering that one, and I'll ask Vinny to take us through a couple of questions and we'll get the panel to answer them.
Yeah, thanks so much, Lucy. I'll just start off by saying a few messages that came in. Tamsin Howard said, really great summary. Thanks very much, gang. And then the first question is for Lucy from Anthony Staines. He says, one issue he sees a lot is the very long decision loops, which can often run from the front line to the department and then over to deeper itself. And he finds that many ideas can die along this lengthy track, he says. So he says, his question is, are there ways to tighten these loops and get faster decisions on innovation? The next question then, just adding to that, Angela, you touched on it a bit and Lucy has alluded to it earlier, but how did you get these stakeholders on boards that might have been set in their ways a bit or a bit reluctant to adapt, shall we say? How did you get them to engage in the innovations, like possibly going paperless using e-submissions or the virtual courts? And then a final question then for Eilís and Eddie to think about was, in terms of digitalizing our services, how do we ensure our services are accessible for all, including users who may not have the capacity to use online services? So we might start with Angela, if that's possible.
Yeah,
I'd start with Angela and come back in.
Yeah, I can probably answer both questions together almost. in order to get stakeholders to engage, you have to have, there's always that question, what's in it for me? Everybody starts with that. So what's in it for me? And the reality was, in a way, the gun was to their heads, because if they didn't engage remotely, for example, there wasn't a lot of options to do work in the traditional way. So if you look at it, the Supreme Court comprises 7 sitting judges, all of a certain age. If we were going to put the 7 judges in a room and one person got sick, the country had no Supreme Court. So the fact that there was judicial leadership for this was hugely important. The Chief Justice, remote court started where myself and himself had a conversation going. He was talking about live streaming like they do in the UK, and I was going, no, I don't think we could do that. You know, Oireachtas TV cost millions to set up and so on. And but then we kind of thrashed around, well, what did we have already that we could repurpose? And it kind of came from there. But it was hugely important to have the Chief Justice on board. He's the senior judge in the country. He's the chairman of the board of the court service. And he was also willing, and the Supreme Court were willing, and the Court of Appeal were willing, as the 2 highest courts in the country. They were willing to be the guinea pigs, which was fantastic, because if you have kind of a bit of clout, you know, whoever's willing to take the chance, that, because there's always a chance that things could go wrong. So to have that leadership at a very senior level was really, really important. And I suppose then when it comes to engaging the stakeholders, the fact that the first cases that were done were at that very senior level meant you had, you know, the reality is that as you go up along the food chain in the courts, you don't get very junior practitioners before the Supreme Court. So you had senior members of the bar, you had very senior solicitors participating in the first cases. What also happened then was we got the Commercial Lawyers Association. They came back to us after the first few cases with suggestions for improvements. So we set up a user group. I had a consultative user group that I was using during COVID anyway, but we set up a user group specifically to deal with the remote courts, and we had judges involved in that as well. So the feedback, it was a two-way street that we could work out where the teething problems were and how we could improve things. And certainly with that engagement, it helped us to improve some things, and it also then built a kind of a confidence in the system. And what's happened subsequently is that the people who've got involved, you know, the judges are increasingly using the technology to do call overs. So traditionally, where we'd have called, I don't know, 300 people into a courtroom to find out whether cases were going on the following week or the week after or whatever, that's all done remotely now. And people have had a kind of a lived experience where they've dialed in just to do a call over, and then maybe the case is going to go on in a courtroom the following week. But the more lived experience you get less afraid of things. In the beginning, we had a lot of people saying, oh, this doesn't work and that doesn't work. And it turned out it was they didn't know how to use the camera function on their laptop or whatever. They hadn't their speakers set right. So as people have improved with grown used to the technology, and it might be doing Zoom pub quizzes or having a Zoom glass of wine at home in the evening with their mates or whatever. But as people have got more used to the technology, they're more willing to engage then as well. So it's a combination of everything. You need loads of drivers. You need the senior leadership. You do need a little bit of a gun to the head that this is going ahead whether you like it or not. And then you also need to listen to feedback so that where you can improve things for people, you do. And what we've said from the start is, look, this is a quick fix. It's a band-aid to see can it get us over the hump of COVID. But the reality is that some of the things we've learned we'll keep, and there are other bits that we won't. You know, one thing that's happened is the technology we have, you can't pin the judge's face on the screen. So if you think of court, a barrister likes to see the person's reaction as they tell their story in the courtroom, and they can't see the reaction, they can only see themselves. So they find that quite disconcerting. So it's things like that we need to improve when we go out for a proper platform. But it's that thing of the leadership was there, it absolutely was there from the start, because the judiciary realised very quickly that we couldn't continue to bring people into courtrooms in the way that we had, you know, over the last several hundreds of years. Social distancing is what, you know, we have to work within 2 metre social distancing. moving, and unfortunately our courtrooms just aren't big enough. So the only way to do this is a mix now. And what we're seeing increasingly are hybrid cases. So we have a big case, a medical negligence test case starting in 2 weeks' time, all going well, and that's going to be done in a kind of a hybrid way. Normally there'd be 60 or 70 people in the courtroom. We've it down to 25, but the 25 key people who'll be in the courtroom, and then everybody else will remote in. So it's about having I think an open mind is very important for everybody involved in it as well, that as stakeholders got used to the idea and spoke to their friends who had tried things out and said, yeah, actually that does work, they became less skeptical. Yeah.
To be coming right across that, say, the senior leadership is huge. The user design, so you're thinking about who actually has to use these services, and then you're kind of iterating as you went along. So you find a problem, you fix it, and then kind of as that moves on, then people get more and more trust with the system. And then patience is huge. Obviously, if the camera isn't working, it's going to be a big deal then, and it can throw people off. We're probably going to have some of them patience issues on this call already. I think Lucy wants to say something. Maybe not. But I think, again, look, we're all learning, and we have to stay very flexible, fixed, and free during this Innovation Week, because there's a lot going on. I suppose the hybrid design is huge as well, where I certainly see it as we're going to have to take some of the great things we used to do with some of the great things we're doing now, and kind of mash the two of them together. And as kind of we move forward, this will be the new way of design, and instead of kind of regressing back into the way we were. I think just maybe while we're waiting to get Lucy back, I might move to maybe Eilís or Eddie. Did you want to touch on the question about the digitalizing our services, and kind of how do we reach those people that mightn't have the same capacity as others? Might start with Eilís, if that's okay, ladies first.
Yeah, thanks a million, Vinny. Just to say, I suppose we do have a bit of experience of this in the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, because we did have to move to 100% online for our basic payment system a couple of years ago. It was a legal imperative. It was something that we had to do, but obviously for some people that is quite challenging, that their applications for the basic payment would be going completely online. So what we did was we looked at the analysis, we looked at the data and tried to get as many insights from that as we could. We saw where the people who normally submitted paper forms, where they were distributed around the country. So our people actually went out and held roadshows around the country. They went to them and went to those people and engaged with them directly. We set up IT systems and computers. We showed them how to log in, how to access their information, and how to make their application for the basic payment online. So that was a hugely useful opportunity for us, if you like, to interface with our clients and our customers in the first instance, to listen to the issues that they were having. And I suppose that's something that we're looking to give effect to again in our innovation strategy. And so that's available to people as well. If they want to know more about that, that's available as a case study that was reviewed and examined by the IPA as a way of engaging with citizens. Just to say, I suppose, this year it has been a bit of a challenge because we haven't been able to send our people out to engage with those people. So we've had to take an entirely different approach this year, but we've used the information, the data and the insights again, and we've been proactively contacting and ringing those people up to make sure that people could submit those applications and that everything would work well. So we're very hopeful and optimistic that has worked very effectively again this year. Thanks.
Yeah, and I suppose the journey is a huge part of it, and it's bringing people. We can't just. I know everybody, as Andrew said, is used to the pub quiz at this stage, but there's still parts of society that need to be brought on this journey with us, and it's a big learning curve for everyone. And I just to kind of touch on a point you made there, that say departments need to work in collaboration as well, in that if one department goes paperless, so I just know an example, say with the guards, if they went paperless, they interact with the court service and the Department of Justice. So if they're not gone paperless as well, there can be a bit of a breakdown then in the whole process. So it's vitally important, I suppose, then that all the all the departments are talking to each other as well, and that one department isn't kind of going on a solo run themselves, that we're kind of all going in the same direction. And Eddie, had you anything to add to that, I suppose, from a LGMA point of view, and like really been front facing as well?
Yeah, I think what's very important there is that, by using innovation to solve problems like that, there's tools there that will help you identify where there may be issues and indeed help you solve them. If you take the use of personas, for instance, in the case that Eilís spoke about there, by using the personas, you'd identify cohort of people who will not be able to access certain services, even though in that case there seemed to be a legal requirement for them to do that. So the solution in that case might be slightly different than if it was an elective service. The majority might go online or digitalized, but again, you might have to keep some sort of a provision there for people to work around it, if you like, by appointment or by assistance, like what the result was there. But I think that's one of the beauties of using innovation and the innovation tools, is you can identify these things up front and if you like, have solutions to the problems before they actually become the problems, and indeed, Angela, your case was very, very interesting there about the courts and that, and it's amazing what it's amazing what a crisis can do, when the back is to the wall. And I said this earlier, I think when you looked at all the innovation the local authorities had to get in place at a very, very quick time. When the back is to the wall and when there's a burning platform there, that's when things get done and people come to the table and say, right, we have to do this. How do we do it? So this is where the innovation tools, I think, are very, very important.
Yeah, and that's a really crucial point as well, in that now that we've been forced to react, you can really see in the public service there's been such quick reactions everywhere, and I think that might be the point that Anthony had asked Lucy about, in terms of how do we condense down these the length of these decisions, as he was kind of alluding to the fact that ideas can die along the way. So I might go back to Lucy if she's there to maybe touch on Anthony's question.
Yeah, thanks, Vinny. Yeah, indeed, I'm here. I think I was something happened there, and I was kicked off for some reason, but I'm back in now, and I hope all the questions that you raised have been answered. In relation to that long loop for decision making, and I suppose the long loop from organisations to the centre, or to getting support or getting budgets for particular types of innovation. Anthony, I completely understand that, and I completely am very, very aware of it. And I think a lot of that goes back to a couple of fundamental things that we're trying to address. I mean, one of them is that we're operating in a very traditional ecosystem, a very traditional and very old-fashioned structure. We're engaging with we've got funding again from the EU, because we use that support mechanism to get to push through with these ideas. But we're doing a review now of the organisational structures of the civil service, because we have a structure that's 100 years old. It's very traditional. It's very hierarchical. There's a lot of loops, a lot of moving things up the line, getting approval, getting sign off. We hear that from our surveys, and we often find that our staff at particular levels of the organisation, particularly at the lower grades, are very disempowered by this and feel that there's a very huge hierarchical structure on top of them, and inhibiting them from being as innovative and as creative as they would like to be. So we're trying to address that, Anthony. Equally, we're trying to address it with the kind of way we go about strategic workforce planning, where a lot of things have to be approved by the centre. So we're trying to devolve and responsibility to local organisations and to the organisations in the system to make their own choices about workforce planning and their own plans, as long as they stay within certain parameters and certain budgets. So we're doing quite a big piece of work on that. But they're the kind of systems that we have to gradually move away from, because we need to be more agile and more responsive in the 21st century. So the big question we're asking now in terms of our next civil service reform plan in the next 10 years is, are these the structures that will be agile and responsive enough to enable us to deal with all the demands that are facing us in the 21st century? So that's all I can say right now, Anthony, in terms of how we're trying to address that. But I do really 100% agree with you. You have to be able to know how to navigate things to get through. to get through this are very big transformations. But equally, a lot of what we're doing here as well is handing the power back to yourselves locally. There's an enormous amount that you can do locally to make things happen at a local level without any sanction from deep or without any kind of loop into the centre at all. And it's trying to promote that as well and to utilise kind of all the skills and the staff that we have, because many of our staff, because of the structures that we have, might be underutilised. And this is one other mechanism of unleashing all of that capability and that talent. So
Thanks
I think
very
we're
much,
at...
Lucy.
Have we many questions? Because I think we're 3:05 now, Vinny. Did you get through a number of questions there where I was offline?
Yes, I am conscious that a few people had connectivity issues as well, and I will remind everyone that all of these will be recorded and put up on the website for anyone that did struggle to stay on the link today. I do have one more question, Lucy, just for Eilís, just because I know a lot of people have come back in. A very quick one. It's just in relation to the workshops. How are they managed online? Can organisations facilitate these themselves, or would they need external support when completing when they're identifying their priorities for actions that need to implement the innovation strategies?
Yes, Vinny, just to say, I suppose that that particular software was used for some of the workshops, and we found that particularly useful. And that's something that I know maybe the DAFM team would be able to advise on as to the particular software solutions that were used. But certainly there are solutions out there that can facilitate the types of workshops that we would have normally done on a face-to-face basis. And we've used some of those, and that's very useful. It's something that we're planning to use as well in a conference that's coming up shortly, to use something like Padlet to get people's ideas and to be able to capture those and do it in an online way, when what you would normally do is have an interactive session with people around a table making their suggestions. So certainly there are software solutions that can support, but definitely we had to do the workshops on an online basis. And it was amazing how well we could do that, really. When needs must, you can achieve these things. Thanks.
So Vinny, if we have lots more questions, I know, and we can actually field them. We can give answers to those online, I suppose, and we can connect back with our participants later on, because I know you all have other events to go to now and other things to do. But for me now, just to close, just to say thank you very much to our panel presenters today, but not just for your presentations today, which were great and very inspiring, but for the work that you do and that you are doing in your organisations. And it's great to be able to showcase all of these wonderful things that are happening. So thank you to you, Angela. You're doing a wonderful job there in the court service. We're hearing about it every day, and we're delighted to hear it. And thanks, Eilís.
Thanks, Lucy.
With your wonderful changes in the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, and all of the big challenges ahead. And thanks, Eddie, for the LGMA and all of the local authorities, and send our thanks to the local authorities for, as I said, the great responses they've had to COVID and the work that they do. And of course, thanks to our own team, thanks to Breda, who is the head of the innovation team, and to Vinny and all of the team behind the scenes, and Tom and all of the technology people who are running these events. So this is only the start. That's just today, the first day of Innovation Week. I understand, Vinny, that we also have, this week is also Maths Week. So we're in good competition. But there are many wonderful events, very diverse events happening, both on this, through ourselves, but more importantly, in your own organisations and in your own sectors. And please encourage your staff to engage with these. As Robert said, it's a time that we could use for reflection and for rebooting and re-inspiring ourselves for the wonderful things. But I have to say, to finish, that I'm very, very proud of our public service, and I'm very proud of our civil service in everything that they do and everything that they have done in the last 7 months to really, respond to the enormous challenge that we face and to help our citizens work through this. So on that note, I'll say thanks to all of you, and no doubt we'll see you all during the week at various events. Thanks a million. Bye now.
Thanks a million, Lucy.